right, welcome out to Drake's Dungeon. I am Drake. Joining me this episode is a person who's only been with the company for 1 year. In fact, his 1 year anniversary is this week, and this is a person that has definitely worn a lot of hats in the short time that they've been here. Somebody who has been able to see the game and the company and everything like that from a lot of different angles. And I'm really excited to bring him on to kind of talk about the future of War Commander. So without further ado, joining us is Kuriel.
Hey, Drake. Thanks for having me. It's been a long journey for me and it's been a really good one. I've been through a lot of different domains in the company, seen a lot of things. Started in the CS department and learned about some of the struggles and frustrations of the community and able to learn a lot about the game, the meta, some of the strategies that have been coming out of players more recently, and some of the pain points.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things that I think has really been cool about you is when you started. Obviously, like Abe and I, spent a lot of time, mostly Abe, training you and everything like that. But the one thing that I think we were both really happy to see is just how many questions that you asked. Obviously, when people are new, they have a lot of questions. But, one of the things about you was the type of questions you were asking. It wasn't so much about, like, obviously you wanted to help players, you wanted to do all that stuff, but you were more into like wanting to know how every little thing worked. Every day there was like these questions, like these advanced level questions when you were only with the company for like 3 weeks. That was definitely impressive. So, like I said, you've kind of come a long way. You've worn a lot of hats. So why don't you kind of go over with us the different things that you have done over the past year? Like you said, you started with customer support. So what exactly? Where are you? Where did you go after that, and where are you at now?
Well, after that, I actually moved on to the QA side of things and was able to get more of a close relationship with the previous and current game team. I learned a lot about the struggles of working with some of the older technology that we have in the game, some of the limitations we have, which is why sometimes I'd ask, why don't we do this? And sometimes it's just not feasible to do in a realistic time. And sometimes it takes a bit of shaping to get things the way you want them to be so that it can feel good in the game and you can be happy about it. So it gave me a lot of perspective on some of the challenges coming from the other side, not just the community and game side of things. So that was a lot of fun. And I started helping out with a lot of the balance testing in some of the bases and looking at some of the units and what they did. So on the QA side of things is really getting a good look at the game as a whole from the other side of the fence, so to speak.
And then now, where are you at currently? What are you doing now for the team?
I'm actually mostly doing design. I've started building a few bases from the last few missions. I've actually taken over more of the main mission track side of things. So some of the bases you've seen more recently have been kind of my first step into more base building and, seeing how that goes. And I have my own, I guess everyone has their own kind of way they design a base and what a base looks like in their mind. So you'll see more of that in the future, and that's what I've been starting on the design side of things. And actually tomorrow's my 1 year anniversary, which also marks my last day in QA. So moving forward, I'll actually be working full time with the design team and helping shape the game a bit and learning more about that from the other guys and what's involved with all of that.
That's the cool thing about you, Kuriel, is that, like I mentioned, you asked a lot of questions, and it was clear that you had a bit more advanced technical background when you started in customer support, and you were asking all these questions, and everybody around you was like, "This guy really knows a lot of stuff. Like, let's take him to QA." And then you're in QA, and you're doing this balance testing, and you're understanding the battles and how things work better than anybody. I remember distinctly there was a base in one of the events that everybody was struggling with, that everybody was having a really hard time with, and you're like, "Oh, I beat it with 8 absolvers," and the rest of us are throwing like 4 or 5 platoons at a base trying to beat it. And you're like, "Yeah, I just did it with 8 absolvers. That's what I did." And like you definitely show that you have an understanding for design, and I'm really happy that you've been able to kind of guide your path here in such a way, and I'm really excited for the players to see the type of stuff that you're going to be coming up with.
Yeah, that was a kind of an oh no moment for me because sometimes I get my head down and I'm too stuck into things. So I was like, for me, I'm like, oh yeah, like I can do it with 8 absolvers. That's cool. But I don't understand that everyone uses different strategies and I had to check myself. So, that was one of the flaws that I had is I wanted to win and do it really well, but guess what? Not everyone's going to have the time to think through these strategies. Not everyone's going to have the units you have. So, moving forward after that kind of, I guess, kerfuffle because we had to nerf it, I kind of tried to incorporate a lot of different strategies in a lot of my testing and understanding that that's not the case. So it was cool, I can do this, but it was also, it's one of those things where I have to think of the bigger picture of things sometimes. So.
But that's really cool, though. I mean, it's one thing that in such a short amount of time you were able to understand the game so well that you were able to formulate some really advanced level strategies. But you're also able to like be kind of humble and go like, yeah, but most people aren't going to be able to do this, and pull it back where needed. So that's definitely a sign of somebody who's very wise in what they do. So that's really good. You mentioned that you're going to be working on some of the bases. Is there anything thing else that you're going to be designing or having your hands in at all?
Yeah, I'm hoping to get more on the balancing side of things, and I really want to get into some of the units later on. I've worked on some of the upcoming dev units, so the rogue faction units, but hopefully later on I'll get my hands on some of the new experimental units and start
Hmm.
playing around with them.
Well, that's a perfect segue because we are playing around with these new experimental units right now. And we had young Russell on last month to kind of talk about the Helios, but we have a whole slew over the next couple months of these new types of units coming out. Can you let us know a bit about some of these new units, like, why we consider them experimental? Why are they capped at a certain number? What makes these things just kind of special?
Yeah, of course. With regards to the new experimental units, everything is, not set in stone is one of the things I'd stress about them. With the limit, there's a couple things we're trying to do with it. We're trying to prevent stuff like players would always be frustrated with the devout spam and the penance spam in players' base. So it became like this giant arms race where it's like it was just never ending. And it felt like spamming one unit was the only way to do things. And there's just one best unit. So with the limit, it kind of makes it more obtainable for most players to get a higher number of them. You're going to know how many are coming in a base, and there's going to be counters to those. So it's just not like you're going to have an endless stream of units that you have to fend off.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's the thing that I like it so much about it is that, like, you don't have to worry about the person that has more time than you do, like, or the more resources that can build way more stuff than you. Like, you're gonna know that everybody that puts the time in to hit that cap is going to be more or less at the same level you are, and it's going to make those battles come a lot more down to skill as opposed to just who can flood the battle the most. So yeah, definitely some cool stuff there. With the Helios, we started stuff with like the light technology, and that's actually going to be a trend into our next couple things. Do you know a little bit more about what this light technology stuff is going to really be able to do?
Moving forward, we're moving to new damage typings so that we can more stop the power creep a little bit. So having the Helios have light tech that's good against the Vercraft arc will make it so that in events, players will like to use these. They'll be rewarded for obtaining them. But then when we go back into PvP, it's not like you just bring the Helios now and everything else is obsolete. The Helios is a good option. It may be a better option than some other units, but if we add an extra layer where they're good in the event bases, then it's much easier to balance units around that, and it's much easier or allow people to use the other units they want to use. Like if they really like the penance or the devotes, it's like, yeah, that's still an okay option. It may not be the best meta option, but we don't want to just kind of absolve all the other units of their duty as soon as the next arc comes out. So one way to get around that is by making the new units just good, like really great in that arc, but good in everything else.
Right. So that way, like the older stuff is still going to have a bit more of a lifespan, and then it's about really picking the right tool for the job. You got your awesome units that are going to work great in events. They'll still work good and everything else, but they're really designed to be part of the meta. But you can still use all the other stuff that you want.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things about the new seasonal units that I think not many people have noticed is that they are actually a bit faster repair than
Mm,
previous units. And one of the reasons is since we're not allowing you to spam all these units, we didn't want to take that negative of having the long wait for repairs and kind of chop that down a little bit so you can feel like you're bringing this unit into battle more often and get to play around with it. And especially with the new seasonal units, we're trying to, at a lower level, show you how good it is. And one way we're doing that is by squishing the levels a bit more. So it's not a huge gap between a level 1 and a level 20, but still very significant.
mhm,
And when you come into event, we want you to be able to acquire the gold tech, because usually the gold tech defines a bit of how the unit is. And doing so allows us to show you how big the unit's going to be and how it's going to play. Because sometimes you'd wait for, a couple weeks or a month down the road where you can get the gold tech, and then you kind of judge the unit then. Allowing a
mhm.
quicker glance of like what the unit does and what it's going to be good for might help players understand if they want to acquire a bunch of these units or if they just want a couple
Mhm.
off the bat.
No, that's good. And yeah, like you really get to see the upper potential right away at day one that it's out, and you don't have to wonder like, oh, I wonder what the next major gold tech's going to be. You're going to be able to know exactly what it's capable of right away. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss?
I know it's a hot topic in the community. I know there's been a lot of discussion around HTML5, and everyone knows that Flash is going away, and we're working hard on HTML5. So, just one thing I'd like to stress from my time in QA and CS is just try and get as much information and as detailed as reports as you can, because we do look at all that stuff. And just because we don't fix the issue you're having right away doesn't mean that it isn't high priority on our list and that we're
Mhm.
looking at all that stuff.
Yeah, I think the number one thing that I hear from QA and engineers when I report an issue that players are having, it's usually like, "Hey, can I get? Is there more information on this?" And I'm like, "I don't have any more." Like like this the bare minimum is what gets reported to me a lot of times that I pass on. And yeah, so just making sure if you're experiencing an issue to be as clear as you can, provide as much detail as you can, so when QA and engineers start trying to work on that issue, they have as much information as possible to go on, because we're not always going to be able to see the same issues that another player is going to be, whether it's because of what type of computer or operating system we're using, what type of browser we're using. Our internet connection might be different. So there's always these variables that make it so we can't just easily replicate something that someone reports. So that's absolutely a great point. And that actually brings me to the last thing I kind of want to talk about is Flash is ending. Flash will be done in basically a month. We're looking at it. I've mentioned on the past in the past episodes too that browsers are already removing Flash from their browsers. Operating systems like the Apple operating systems, the Mac operating systems, and Windows have been removing Flash. Even Adobe itself has been sending out messages on my computer, at least, pop up saying, Flash is almost done. Do you want to remove it? So we are very much getting close to the end of Flash, and HTML5 will be the way to go and the only way to go when that happens. So if you have not yet joined the beta, please do so. We need to get as much information as possible so we can make it as smooth as possible so that hopefully there won't be any major issues when we do need to completely switch over to that client. Your participation in this is hugely appreciated by the team, and will just help us, be ready for what's to come. Kuriel,
Yes.
as always, it is great to talk with you, and thank you for kind of coming on and giving us a little bit of insight to not only your career but the units that are coming out and what you're going to be doing. And I think the community always loves it when you pop in on Discord and everything like that. So it's good to have a voice for the community to attach to that name. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Drake.
Not a problem. All right, well, we will be back next month with another episode of Drake's Dungeon. So until then, thank you so much for playing War Commander. Bye.